The massive space station floated silently in the darkness above Xanthara Prime. Inside its crystal walls, 12 different alien species sat around a circular table that glowed with soft blue light. Each creature looked different from the others. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had 4 eyes or skin that changed colors. But today they all shared the same expression of fear. Xanthara raised one of her long, graceful arms. Water dripped from her blue skin as she spoke. Her voice carried the weight of thousands of years of wisdom, but now it trembled with worry. "Friends of the Council," she began, "we face the end of everything we know." The hologram in the center of the table showed a star map. Red dots marked dead systems where entire worlds had vanished. The red was spreading like a disease across the galaxy. In just 6 months, 47 civilizations had been completely destroyed, not conquered or defeated, but erased as if they had never existed. "Here the Void Reapers continued their advance," Xanthara continued. "Our best weapons cannot scratch their ships. Our smartest minds cannot predict their next move. They adapt to everything we try." A creature that looked like a giant insect clicked its mandibles. This was Hive Queen Zoc, whose people were famous throughout the galaxy for their perfect battle strategies. Her compound eyes reflected the red dots on the map. "We have run 1 million combat simulations," SX said in her buzzing voice. "Success rate, 0%. Our conventional forces cannot win this war." The Crystalline Collective's representative, a being made of living diamond, chimed like broken glass. "Even our most advanced technology is useless. The Reapers learn faster than we can create new weapons. What defeats them today makes them stronger tomorrow." Around the table, other species nodded their various heads in agreement. The peaceful Meridians, the ancient Kepler Mines, the wise Vorthan Seers, all had tried to stop the Void Reapers. All had failed. "We have one final option," Xanthara said quietly. She touched a control panel, and the hologram changed. Now it showed a small blue-green planet in a distant corner of the galaxy. The Forbidden Archives contain records of species too dangerous for contact. This world has been marked as extremely hazardous to all galactic life. The other council members leaned forward to study the planet. It looked so small and peaceful from space. White clouds swirled over blue oceans and green continents. It seemed impossible that anything dangerous could come from such a beautiful world. "This planet so hazardous?" asked Tervel, whose people had conquered their enemies through pure intellect rather than violence. His large brain pulsed behind transparent skin as he thought. Xanthara touched another control. Data filled the air above the table. The numbers made several council members gasp in shock. "Gravity, 1.2 times our standard," she read. "Atmospheric pressure, crushing to most species. Weather patterns, violent storms, temperature extremes, natural disasters occurring daily. The surface is constantly changing due to tectonic activity. But that is not the worst part," she continued. "The planet supports life forms that should not be able to exist. Creatures that hunt each other for survival. Plants that poison anything that touches them. Even the smallest organisms wage constant war against each other." The insect queen's wings buzzed with nervousness. "What about the dominant species?" Xanthara hesitated before answering. "They call themselves humans. Automated scouts classified them as extreme biological hazards and recommended permanent quarantine. They are ... unlike anything we have encountered." She brought up images of humans. The council members stared at the pictures of creatures that walked on 2 legs, had forward-facing eyes like predators, and showed their teeth when happy. 2 beings who had evolved on peaceful worlds. Humans looked terrifying. "They have no natural armor or weapons," Xanthara explained, "yet they became the dominant species on their world. They did this by creating tools and weapons more advanced than their bodies. But most disturbing of all, they make war against their own kind." The council chamber fell silent. In all of galactic history, no species had ever fought wars against itself after achieving intelligence. It was unthinkable. "They have fought thousands of conflicts," Xanthara continued. "Large wars, small wars, wars over territory, wars over ideas, wars over resources that could have been shared. The scouts recorded over 6,000 different ways these humans have found to kill each other. Tervel's brain pulsed faster. If they are so violent, why consider contacting them? They might attack us. Because, said the Crystalline Collective's representative, they are the only species in our database that has experience with warfare. Every other civilization achieved peace before developing advanced technology. These humans have been perfecting combat for their entire history. The Hive Queen buzzed thoughtfully. Our simulations assume logical, self-preserving behavior. What if we face an enemy with beings who do not follow logical patterns? Zexthera nodded slowly. The scouts noted that humans often act in ways that seem to contradict their own survival. They risk their lives for abstract concepts like honor or freedom. They protect weaker members of their species, even when it costs them resources. They explore dangerous places simply to see what is there. She paused and looked around the table at her fellow council members. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to enjoy facing challenges that could kill them. The scouts recorded humans deliberately, seeking out dangerous situations for something they call fun. The map returned to show the advancing red dots of the Void Reapers. They had consumed another system while the council talked. Billions of beings had died in the time it took to have this conversation. We are asking creatures from a death world to save us from death machines, Zexathora said. It may be our only chance. One by one, the council members voted. It was not an easy decision. They were inviting beings they feared into their peaceful galaxy. But the alternative was extinction. The vote was unanimous. Very well, Zexthara announced. We will send Ambassador Cathrell to make first contact with the humans. May the ancient stars help us all. As the council session ended, the members returned to their home worlds to prepare for what might come. None of them truly believed that primitive creatures who had not even achieved faster-than-light travel could succeed where they're advanced. Civilizations had failed. They had no way of knowing that they were about to discover why the automated scouts had marked Earth as too dangerous to contact, so they could not imagine that the very things which made humans seem primitive and violent were exactly what the galaxy needed. The Void Reapers had never faced an enemy that treated impossible odds. It's merely another problem to solve. They had never encountered beings who saw certain death as an acceptable price for victory. They had never met creatures who considered warfare not just a necessity, but an art form to be perfected. Most importantly, the Reapers had never fought an enemy that became more dangerous when cornered, more creative when desperate, and more determined when everything seemed lost. The Deathworlders were about to receive their invitation to war, and the galaxy would never be the same. Captain Jake Morrison floated in the International Space Station, checking readings on his tablet when the universe changed forever. Outside the main viewing window, space rippled like water, and a ship appeared from nowhere. It was beautiful, and terrible at the same time, made of what looked like liquid silver that moved and flowed while keeping its shape. Jake's hands shook as he grabbed the radio. Houston, we have a situation up here. There's a ship outside the station. It's not one of ours. The response crackled through static. Say again, ISS. Did you say ship? Confirmed. Unknown vessel, approximately 200 meters long. It's definitely not human technology. Jake watched as lights blinked along the alien ship's hull in patterns that seemed almost like a language. Within minutes, every space agency on Earth was watching the live feed. The alien ship made no aggressive moves. It simply waited, as if it knew that humans needed time to understand what was happening. Then the radio came alive with a voice that was clearly not human. It spoke perfect English, but with a strange, musical quality that made Jake's skin crawl. Human vessel, I am Ambassador Cathrell, representing the Galactic Council. I request permission to communicate with your world's leaders. This is a matter of galactic emergency. President Linda Hayes sat in the White House Situation Room 12 hours later, staring at the alien creature on the main screen. Cathrell looked like a cross between a human and a bird, with delicate features and skin that changed color based on his emotions. Right now, his skin showed nervous patterns of yellow and green. President Hayes, Cathrell began, his voice carrying clearly across space. I bring greetings from the Galactic Council and a request for aid that I pray you will consider. Round the table sat General Rick Thompson, Admiral Kate Sullivan, and Dr. Alan Price, Earth's leading physicist. They all leaned forward as Kethril explained the situation with the Void Reapers. "These machines have destroyed 47 civilizations in 6 months," the alien ambassador said. His skin turned darker as he spoke of the destruction. "Cannot be reasoned with, cannot be bargained with, and cannot be stopped by any known weapon. They adapt to everything we try against them." Dr. Price raised his hand. "Ambassador, can you show us tactical data on these Reapers? Weapons, capabilities, defensive systems, anything that might help us understand what we're dealing with." Kethril's skin flashed bright orange for a moment, which Jake had learned meant surprise. "Dr. Price, I must explain that these beings have defeated civilizations millions of years older than humanity. They possess technology far beyond anything your species has developed." General Thompson leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "With respect, Ambassador, that just makes the challenge more interesting. Can we see the data?" The alien's skin began cycling through colors rapidly as he transmitted information to Earth's computers. As the data filled their screens, the humans began asking questions that made Kethril increasingly uncomfortable. "What's their power source?" Dr. Price wanted to know. "How do they communicate with each other?" asked Admiral Sullivan. "Do they have a command structure, or are they individual units?" General Thompson inquired. But it was Colonel Lisa Martinez who asked the question that truly frightened the ambassador. "What's their manufacturing capability? Can they replace losses quickly, or do they have limited numbers?" Kethril's skin turned a deep purple that indicated extreme distress. "Darnell Martinez, these are not questions typically asked by species facing the Void Reapers. Most civilizations focus on defensive strategies or evacuation plans." "Most civilizations didn't grow up on Earth," Martinez replied calmly. "We're used to fighting things that want to kill us. That's just Tuesday for us." As the briefing continued, Kethril began to understand why the automated scouts had classified Earth as a forbidden world. These humans were analyzing the Void Reapers the same way they might study any other enemy. There was no panic, no despair, just cold professional interest in finding ways to kill machines that had terrified the galaxy. "Ambassador, President," Hayes said during a break in the technical discussions, "you mentioned that the Reapers adapt to whatever tactics are used against them. How quickly do they adapt?" "Usually within hours of first exposure to a new weapon or strategy," Kethril replied. "This is why they are so unstoppable. By the time we understand their weaknesses, they have already evolved to eliminate them." Doctor. Price and General Thompson exchanged a look that made the alien's skin flash warning colors. "That might actually work in our favor," Dr. Price said quietly. "How could that possibly be an advantage?" Kethril asked, though he was afraid of the answer. General Thompson smiled, and for the first time, Kethril understood why predators showed their teeth. "Because, Ambassador, we're very good at failing. We've had lots of practice." The alien's confusion must have shown because Colonel Martinez explained, "Most species probably try to perfect a strategy before using it against the Reapers. Humans are different. We'll throw a dozen bad ideas at them, learn from each failure, and keep adapting faster than they can." But that would result in enormous casualties," Kethril protested. "Your people would die testing these ideas." The room fell silent. For a moment, President Hayes looked around the table at her military leaders before answering. "Ambassador, let me tell you something about humans. We've been fighting wars for thousands of years, not against alien invaders or machines, but against each other. We've learned that sometimes the only way to win is to be willing to lose everything trying." Admiral Sullivan nodded. "We've had soldiers throw themselves on grenades to save their friends. Pilots crashed their planes into enemy ships. People who walked into certain death because it was the right thing to do. We call them heroes," General Thompson added. "And we have more heroes than you can count." Kethril's skin had gone completely white, which indicated either extreme fear or shock. You would sacrifice your own people to fight an enemy you've never seen, to save civilizations you've never met, as President Hayes said simply. "Because if we don't, who will?" The ambassador began to understand something that terrified him more than the Void Reapers. These humans were not just willing to fight. Impossible odds, they were eager to do it. When other species saw certain death, humans saw a challenge to overcome. "There's something else you should know about us," Dr. Price said, pulling up Earth's history files. "We don't just fight wars, we study them. We've analyzed every conflict in our history, learned from every victory and defeat of universities, dedicated to understanding warfare. Your people spent millions of years developing peaceful civilizations," Colonel Martinez added. "We spent thousands of years perfecting ways to kill each other. When it comes to warfare, we're not the primitive species you think we are. We're specialists." Kethril watched in growing horror as the humans began planning their response to the Void Reapers. They weren't asking for time to evacuate their people or negotiate with the machines. They were discussing logistics, weapon development, and tactical deployment, as if preparing for the Reapers was just another day at the office. Ambassador President Hayes said as the meeting wound down, "How long do we have before the Reapers reach this sector?" "Perhaps 6 months, if their current pattern holds." Kethril replied weakly. General Thompson grinned, and the expression sent chills down the alien's spine. 6 months? That's plenty of time. We've mobilized for war in less. As the communication ended and the alien ship prepared to depart with Earth's response, Kethril realized what the Galactic Council had done. They hadn't just contacted a primitive species for help. They had awakened something that had been quietly preparing for war for. For thousands of years, the humans weren't afraid of the Void Reapers. They were excited about them. And that, Kethril thought as his ship jumped to faster than light speed, might be the most terrifying thing in the galaxy. 2 weeks after first contact, the entire world had changed. Every major city buzzed with activity as humanity prepared for war. The United Nations building in New York had become the headquarters for something called the Terran Defense Initiative, and General Rick Thompson found himself in charge of preparing Earth's response to an enemy that had defeated civilizations millions of years older than humanity in the basement levels of NASA's Johnson Space Center. Chief Engineer Danny Roberts stared at pieces of alien technology that Kethril had provided as examples. The ambassador had expected humans to spend months just understanding how the devices worked. Instead, Danny's team had taken them apart, figured out their principles, and begun improving on them in just 10 days. "This is impossible," Danny muttered to himself as he watched a test engine produce 3 times more power than the alien original. These people had thousands of years to perfect this technology, and were making it better in our garage. His assistant, Maria Santos, looked up from her computer screen. Maybe that's the problem. They've spent too much time making it safe and reliable. We're making it powerful. Danny nodded as he examined their latest creation, or the alien faster than light. Drive was elegant and sophisticated. The human version looked like it had been built by someone who cared more about results than appearances. Thick cables ran everywhere, cooling systems hissed constantly, and warning lights blinked all over the control panel. "It's not pretty," Danny admitted, "but it'll get us across the galaxy twice as fast as anything they've got." Across the country. At Edwards Air Force Base, Commander Steve Parker climbed into the cockpit of humanity's first faster-than-light spacecraft. The ship was a hybrid of human and alien technology that would have horrified any alien engineer. Where their ships were, smooth and graceful, this looked like someone had strapped rocket engines to a brick and covered it with armor plating. "Control, this is Parker," he said into his radio. "All systems show green, ready for first FTL test flight."
Oh, man.
The voice from the control tower carried a note of concern. "Steve, remember, this is just a test. Take it easy out there." Parker grinned. Inside his helmet, easy isn't the human way. Control, see on the other side. What should have been a careful test flight to the edge of the solar system became humanity's first interstellar journey when Parker decided to see what this thing can really do. By the time he returned 8 hours later, he had visited 3 nearby star systems, mapped to planets that might be suitable for human colonies, and proven that human-modified alien technology could outperform anything the Galactic Council had ever built. "Parker, what the hell were you thinking?" General Thompson demanded when the pilot landed. "That was supposed to be a 20-minute flight to test the engines." "Sorry, General," Parker replied, not looking sorry at all. "Die. Figured if we're going to fight these Void Reapers, We should know what our ships can do under real conditions. Besides, I found something interesting. He pulled up star charts on the main screen. There's a dead system about 50 light-years from here. Looks like the Reapers hit it recently. If we're going to fight them, we should see what we're up against. General. Thompson rubbed his forehead. 2 weeks of working with the alien technology. Humans had already broken every safety protocol and pushed every system beyond its designed limits. It was exactly what he had expected and exactly what worried him. Meanwhile, the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, Dr. Helen Cruz was making discoveries that would change everything. She had spent days studying recordings of Void Reaper attacks, looking for patterns that other species had missed. They're too perfect, she told her team during their morning briefing. Every other species fights the same way. They develop a strategy, test it carefully, then deploy it when they're confident it will work. The Reapers have learned to counter that approach. She pulled up battle footage from the destroyed world of Kepler-9. Watch this. The defenders use a new weapon. It works for exactly 17 minutes. Then the Reapers adapt, and the weapon becomes useless. Every single time, it's the same pattern. Her assistant, Dr. Mark Johnson, leaned forward. So how do we break the pattern? We don't try to perfect our weapons, Helen replied. We make them disposable. Use each one once, then throw it away and try something completely different. That sounds incredibly wasteful, Mark observed. Helen smiled grimly. Wasteful is the human specialty. We're the species that throws away perfectly good equipment just because we found something slightly better. The Reapers have never faced an enemy that treats advanced technology like disposable tools. In the mountains of Colorado, Marine Colonel Tony Valdez was training volunteers for something the galaxy had never seen. Boarding parties designed to fight inside alien spacecraft. The Galactic Council had provided detailed scans of Reaper ship interiors, expecting humans to use the information for defensive planning. Instead, Valdez was teaching his Marines how to break into the ships and fight hand-to-hand combat against machines in zero gravity. Remember, Valdez told his trainees as they practiced in the simulator, these machines are designed to fight ship-to-ship battles. We're not expecting infantry to come knocking on their door. Sergeant Amy Rodriguez raised her hand. Colonel. The briefing said these ships have internal defenses, automated systems, poison gases, temperature extremes that would kill most species. Most species, Valdez agreed, but we're not most species. We're humans. We've been living in hostile environments our entire evolutionary history. A little poison gas and extreme temperature never stopped a Marine. The training exercises that followed would have been considered torture by galactic standards. Marines practiced fighting while their suits leaked atmosphere, learned to navigate in artificial gravity that changed direction randomly, and rehearsed assault tactics in environments that ranged from Arctic cold to desert heat. Why are they so eager to do this? Kethril asked General Thompson during one of his observation visits. The alien ambassador watched in horror as human volunteers lined up to join. Training programs that had a very real chance of killing them. Because it needs to be done, Thompson replied simply. And because they're volunteers, nobody is forcing them to be here. But surely they understand the dangers, Kethril protested. These training exercises alone are more hazardous than most species would consider acceptable for actual combat. Thompson nodded toward the training ground where Marines were practicing zero-gravity combat while wearing suits that had been deliberately damaged. Ambassador, let me tell you about humans. We're the species that climbs mountains because there we jump out of perfectly good aircraft for fun. We race cars at speeds that can kill us, and we call it entertainment. Your people volunteer for dangerous activities recreationally? Kethrel's skin turned the pale blue of confusion. Every weekend, Thompson confirmed. So when we ask for volunteers to fight aliens that want to destroy the galaxy, we get more people than we can train. As word spread through Earth's military communities, recruitment centers were overwhelmed with applicants. Fighter pilots who had trained their entire careers for air-to-air combat eagerly studied space warfare tactics. Submarine crews volunteered to operate in the vacuum of space. Special Forces soldiers practiced techniques for fighting inside alien ships. When Kethril asked pilot Susan Gray why she had volunteered for what was essentially a suicide mission, Her answer chilled him more than anything he had heard since arriving on Earth. "Because someone has to do it," she said calmly. "And we're really good at this kind of thing." The alien ambassador watched as humanity transformed itself from a planet-bound species into a galactic military force in less than a month. Every day brought new innovations that pushed alien technology beyond its limits, new tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare, and new volunteers eager to test both against the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever known. As reports reached him from around the world, Cathral began to understand what the Galactic Council had unleashed. They had not just contacted a primitive species for help. They had awakened a world full of beings who treated impossible challenges as personal invitations and certain death as an acceptable price for victory. The Void Reapers were about to encounter something they had never faced before, an enemy that became more dangerous when the odds were hopeless, more creative when conventional tactics failed, and more determined when everything seemed lost. The Deathworlders were almost ready for war. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the newly built starship, defiance as her fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the mining colonies of Zarian 7. Around her, 20 human warships hung in space like angry metal beasts. Each ship was a nightmare combination of human engineering and alien technology that operated far outside any sane safety margin. The ships looked nothing like the elegant vessels of the Galactic Council, where alien ships were smooth and graceful. Human ships bristled with weapons, armor plating, and systems that had been bolted on wherever they would fit. Warning lights blinked constantly on every control panel, and the constant hum of overcharged engines filled the air. "Admiral," reported Communications Officer Beth Turner, "we're receiving transmissions from the Galactic Council fleet." Maintaining position at the edge of the system, Sullivan nodded. She had expected the aliens to keep their distance. According to their tactical doctrine, engaging the Void Reapers at close range was suicide. Humans had different ideas about acceptable risk. "Contact Captain Henderson on the Indomitable," Sullivan ordered. "Tell him he has permission to begin his attack run." 3 light minutes away, Captain Roy Henderson received the message and grinned inside his helmet. His ship was the smallest in the fleet, built for speed and equipped with experimental weapons that had never been tested in real combat. Engineers had warned him that most of the systems had a 50% chance of exploding when used. "Crew, this is the captain," Henderson announced over the ship's intercom. "We're about to show these machines what humans do to bullies. Remember, we're not here to survive. We're here to win." The Void Reapers detected the human fleet within minutes. 5 massive black ships emerged from hyperspace, each one the size of a small moon. Their surfaces absorbed all light, making them look like holes in space itself. Weapon ports opened along their hulls like thousands of glowing eyes. First, Reaper ship fired, sending a beam of energy that could disintegrate entire mountains toward the human fleet. Every other species in galactic history had responded to such attacks by retreating to maximum range and attempting to outrun the weapons. The humans charged straight into the beam, ramming speed. Henderson shouted as his ship dove toward the Reaper vessel. Behind him, the hull was already beginning to glow from radiation exposure, and half his systems were showing critical failure warnings. All crew to impact positions. The Galactic Council observers watched in horror as the tiny human ship flew directly into the path of a weapon that had destroyed entire fleets. They expected to see the vessel vaporized instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. The Indomitable's experimental shields held just long enough for Henderson to ram his ship directly into the Reaper's hull. At the moment of impact, he detonated his ship's reactor core, creating an explosion that lit up half the solar system. When the light faded, both ships were gone. "My God," whispered Kethril from the bridge of the Council observation ship. "They destroyed themselves to kill one enemy vessel." Admiral Sullivan's voice crackled over the radio, calm and professional. "1 down, 4 to go. All ships, execute. Operation Berserker." What followed violated every principle of space warfare. Instead of maintaining safe distances and using long-range weapons, the human ships flew straight at the remaining Reapers while broadcasting what could only be described as war songs over their communication systems. Commander Lisa Park, piloting. The destroyer Vengeance led the second wave of attacks. Her ship carried weapons that were designed to be fired only once before the launching tubes melted from the heat. Each shot would cripple her own vessel, but that was acceptable if it hurt the enemy. Target the second Reaper, Park ordered her weapons officer. Fire everything we have, then prepare for close combat. The Vengeance unleashed a barrage of missiles, energy weapons, and kinetic projectiles that lit up space like the 4th of July. Most of the weapons were destroyed by the Reaper's adaptive defenses. But a few got through, leaving scars on the Black Hull. The Reaper's response was immediate and devastating. Its weapons tore through the Vengeance's armor like paper, leaving the ship burning and venting atmosphere. Any other species would have retreated or surrendered. Park ordered her crew to abandon ship, then program the vessel to ram the Reaper at maximum velocity. As her people escaped in life pods, she stayed at the helm to make sure the collision was perfect. The explosion took out the Reaper's main weapon array and left it vulnerable to the next wave of human ships. Dr. Alan Price watched the battle from the science vessel Discovery realized that his theories were proving correct. The Void Reaper's adaptive systems, designed to counter logical and self-preserving enemies, were failing against opponents who seemed to have no regard for their own survival. They can't adapt to insanity, he muttered as he watched human ships use tactics that would be considered suicidal by any rational standard. They're trying to counter strategies that don't make sense. The turning point came when Major Pete Collins led a boarding party onto a damaged Reaper vessel. The idea of sending infantry to fight inside an enemy spaceship was so alien to Galactic thinking that no defensive systems had been designed to counter it. Collins and his Marines cut their way through the Reaper's hull, using tools that were barely more than controlled explosions. Inside the ship, they found themselves in a maze of corridors filled with machines that had been designed to fight other spaceships, not humans with rifles and explosive charges. This is like fighting inside a computer, Collins reported as his team moved through the ship's corridors. The machines are trying to use ship-to-ship weapons against us. It's like bringing a cannon to a knife fight. The Marines fought their way to the ship's core, battling automated defenses and repair drones that had never been programmed to deal with infantry. When they reached the central processor, Collins placed the largest explosive charge his team carried and activated a 30-second timer. "All teams, this is Collins," he radioed as his Marines ran for the exit. "We're going to blow the core. Do you want to live? Get clear of this ship right now." The explosion tore the Reaper apart from the inside, sending pieces of alien technology spinning through space. More importantly, it provided crucial data about how the machines were constructed and how they could be destroyed. Back on the Galactic Council observation ship, Kethril stared at the tactical display in shock. In less than 3 hours, the humans had destroyed 3 Void Reaper vessels using tactics that should have been impossible. Their ships were designed to be expendable. Their crews treated death as an acceptable outcome, and their strategies violated every principle of civilized warfare. "How are they doing this?" he asked the ship's tactical officer. "I do not know," the officer replied, his voice shaking. "Our computers cannot predict their actions because their behavior patterns do not match any known intelligent species. Fight as if they have already accepted death and are trying to cause maximum damage before they die." The remaining 2 Reaper ships began to retreat, something that had never happened in recorded galactic history. The machines that had terrorized civilizations for millions of years were running from humans who had been in space for less than 2 months. Admiral Sullivan's voice echoed across the battlefield as the human fleet pursued the fleeing Reapers. "No survivors, no escape. We end this here." The final battle was brutal and short. The remaining human ships, most of them damaged and operating on emergency power, surrounded the 2 Reaper vessels and attacked from all directions simultaneously. They used weapons that destroyed their own ships, tactics that guaranteed massive casualties, and strategies that traded human lives for enemy destruction without hesitation. When the last Reaper ship exploded, only 6 human vessels remained operational out of the original 20. But the victory was complete, and the galaxy had witnessed something that would change everything. The Void Reapers, the unstoppable force that had consumed 47 civilizations, had been defeated by beings from a planet that other species considered too dangerous to contact. As rescue ships arrived to collect survivors and salvage, what remained of the human fleet? Kethrall realized that the galaxy had discovered something more terrifying than the Void Reapers themselves. They had found beings who considered impossible odds to be normal working conditions, and who treated certain death as simply another problem to solve. The Void Reaper stronghold hung in space like a massive metal spider built from the broken pieces of 47 dead worlds. It was the size of Earth's moon, covered in weapon arrays that could destroy entire fleets, and protected by shields that had never been breached. At its heart lay the central intelligence that controlled every Reaper in the galaxy. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of her flagship Retribution, one of only 12 human ships that remained operational after weeks of fighting across the galaxy. Her fleet was battered, running on emergency power, and held together with spare parts and determination, according to every military expert in galactic history. What she was planning was impossible. She was going to attack the stronghold. Anyway, Admiral reported Navigation Officer Tim Barnes, the Galactic Council fleet is maintaining position at a safe distance. They're requesting permission to observe the battle. Sullivan almost laughed. The aliens wanted to watch from far away, while humans did the impossible once again, tell them they can watch from wherever they feel safe. We have work to do. The plan was called Final Gambit, and it horrified even the humans who had volunteered for it. The 12 remaining ships would simultaneously attack the stronghold's power cores, knowing that none of them would survive the mission. Each attack, team understood they were flying to their deaths, and every single one of them was eager to begin. Captain Bill Murphy, commanding the heavy cruiser Thunder, looked around his bridge at his crew. They were young and old, men and women from dozens of countries, united by their willingness to die so others could live. His weapons officer was a former teacher from Canada. His pilot had been a taxi driver in Mexico City. His engineer used to fix cars in Detroit. "Crew, this is the captain," Murphy announced over the intercom. "In 10 minutes, we're going to ram this ship straight into the biggest target in the galaxy. Anyone who wants to object can speak up now." The bridge remained silent, except for the hum of overloaded engines. Murphy nodded with satisfaction. "Good, let's go show these machines what humans think of bullies." Meanwhile, on the Council observation ship, Kethrall watched the human fleet approach the stronghold with growing horror. "Admiral Sullivan, surely you cannot be serious about this attack. That structure has defenses that could destroy 100 fleets." Sullivan's voice came back calm and steady. "Ambassador, let me tell you something about humans. We've been fighting bullies our entire history. Sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to hit them so hard they never get back up." The attack began with Captain Murphy's ship leading the charge. The Thunder accelerated toward the stronghold at maximum velocity, every system pushed beyond safe limits. When the Reaper defenses opened fire, Murphy didn't try to dodge or retreat. He flew straight through the barrage of death rays and particle beams, his ship burning and falling apart around him. "This is for every world you destroyed," Murphy shouted as his ship struck the stronghold's main shield generator. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away, creating a breach that allowed the other human ships to penetrate the enemy's defenses. One by one, the human vessels dove through the gap, each crew knowing they would not return. They sang battle songs, shouted defiance at their enemies, and flew their ships like guided missiles into the heart of the alien structure. Colonel Lisa Martinez, commanding the last operational destroyer, watched her fellow humans sacrifice themselves to clear a path to the stronghold's core. Her ship was barely holding together. Life support was failing, and half her crew was already dead. By every logical standard, she should have retreated. Instead, she pushed her engines to maximum power and aimed for the central intelligence chamber. "This is Martinez to all remaining ships," she broadcast. "We're going to finish this right here, right now. It's been an honor serving with all of you." As her ship dove toward the stronghold's heart, Dr. Helen Cruz activated the experimental weapon she had been developing throughout the war. It was a computer virus designed specifically to turn the Reaper's adaptive technology against itself, but it had never been tested in combat. Helen, are you sure this will work? Martinez asked as they approached the target. No idea, Helen replied honestly. And if it doesn't, at least we'll go down swinging. The virus uploaded into the Reaper network just as Martinez's ship crashed into the Central Intelligence Core. The explosion sent shockwaves through the entire structure. But more importantly, it introduced a deadly new element into the Reaper collective mind. For the first time in their existence, the Void Reapers experienced something they had never encountered: doubt. The virus made them question their own adaptive processes, creating feedback loops that turned their greatest strength into a fatal weakness. Across the galaxy, Reaper ships began shutting down as their central intelligence consumed itself in an endless cycle of adaptation and counter-adaptation. The machines that had terrorized civilizations for millions of years were defeated not by superior firepower, but by a weapon that made them think too much. The explosion of the stronghold lit up space for light years in every direction. When the radiation cleared, the massive structure was gone, replaced by expanding clouds of debris and energy. With it went the collective intelligence that had controlled every Void Reaper in the galaxy. The war was over. In the aftermath, ships from the Galactic Council searched desperately for human survivors. They found a few escape pods, some badly damaged ships limping through space, and approximately 300 humans still alive out of the thousands who had volunteered for the mission. Among the survivors was Chief Petty Officer Anna Brooks, who had been blown clear when her ship's reactor overloaded. As council medics treated her injuries, she asked the question that defined humanity. Did we get them all? Yes, Cathrell replied, his skin showing colors of amazement and grief. The Void Reapers are gone. Your people saved the galaxy. Anna nodded weakly. Good. That's what we came here to do. 3 months later, Cathrell stood before the United Nations General Assembly on Earth to deliver the Galactic Council's formal thanks. As he looked out at the assembled humans, he struggled to find words for what their species had accomplished. People of Earth, he began, the Galactic Council owes you a debt that can never be repaid. You have saved civilizations spanning millions of years of development. You have preserved knowledge and culture that took eons to create. You have given hope to species that had none. The applause that followed was respectful, but subdued. Humans, Cathrell had learned, did not celebrate victories that cost so many lives. Even when those victories saved the galaxy. After the ceremony, President Linda Hayes walked with the alien ambassador through the halls of the United Nations building. Outside, construction crews were already at work building new spaceships and orbital shipyards. Ambassador Hayes said quietly, "The Council is welcome to establish formal relations with Earth. We're honored to join the galactic community." Cathrell's skin flashed with nervous patterns. President Hayes, may I ask what humanity plans to do now? Will you expand into galactic space? Hayes paused to look out a window at the construction sites in orbit. Ships were taking shape that combined human engineering with alien technology, vessels designed for exploration rather than war. Someone has to keep watch, she said simply. The galaxy is a big place, and there might be other threats out there. We're very good at handling threats. The ambassador shivered despite himself. The galaxy was safe from the Void Reapers, but now it faced a new reality. Humanity was no longer confined to its single world. The Deathworlders were now part of the galactic community, bringing with them their willingness to face impossible odds. Their talent for turning disasters into victories, and their disturbing habit of treating certain death as just another problem to solve. As Cathrell prepared to return to the Council with humanity's message of friendship and cooperation, it reflected on what had truly happened. The galaxy had not just been saved by primitive beings from a dangerous world. It had been saved by beings who made the dangerous seem routine, who considered the impossible merely difficult, and who faced the end of everything with courage instead of despair. The Void Reapers were gone. But their defeat had taught the galaxy something important. Sometimes the greatest threats require the most dangerous solutions, and sometimes the most dangerous solutions come from beings who refuse to accept that anything is truly impossible. Humanity had joined the galactic community, and the universe would never be the same.